Most people underestimate the sheer intensity of an empath's emotional world. When we talk about sexual energy or intimacy, what we often miss is that for an empath, every connection carries an emotional weight that is profound, almost gravitational in nature. They don't just experience their own feelings, they absorb yours, your fears, your desires, even the hidden fragments of yourself that you barely acknowledge. Imagine stepping into a room where someone feels everything you feel before you even say a word. That's what it's like to engage with an empath. And in the bedroom, that intensity becomes a double-edged sword. For the uninitiated, it can feel intoxicating at first, almost addictive, but it's also disarming in ways most people aren't prepared for. This emotional intensity isn't performative or accidental. It's a structural part of who they are. Think of it as a frequency. Some people operate on a surface level, a light ripple of experience. Empaths operate in deep waters, where currents move beneath the surface, unseen but immensely powerful. When they are intimate with someone, these currents pull at both people, creating a connection that feels larger than life. And here's the critical point. Most people approach intimacy as if it's a series of acts, a physical exchange. Empaths approach it as a merging of experiences. That's why the depth of their sexual energy can feel dangerous, not in a malicious sense, but in a way that exposes everything you thought you knew about connection. You see, the empath doesn't just touch the body, they touch the psyche. They mirror emotions in a way that forces you to confront yourself. Suddenly, the shallow masks we wear in everyday life, the pretense, the emotional armor become almost useless. With an empath, the surface level connections that so many of us rely on crumble quickly, leaving a raw, unfiltered experience. And here's the truth. Most people are not ready for that. They can be dazzled by the energy, by the passion, but when the weight of that intensity hits, they flinch. They mistake it for dependency or neediness, when in fact it's simply a natural resonance of the empath's being. Philosophically speaking, there's a beauty in this. It's a reminder that sexual energy isn't merely physical. It's a form of communication, a language of the soul. Empathies speak fluently in this language, effortlessly translating the subtle signals of desire, fear, longing, and joy. But like any powerful force, it demands respect and awareness. If you approach it carelessly, it can overwhelm you, leaving you unmoored. If you approach it consciously, it can elevate you, expand your understanding of intimacy, and deepen your capacity to feel, connect, and love. This is why many shy away from empaths, not because they are threatening in the ordinary sense, but because they hold up a mirror that reveals the parts of ourselves we often avoid. They are a challenge to our emotional courage. And in that challenge lies their power, the danger that most people talk about. It's not a danger to be feared recklessly, but to be understood, respected, and navigated with awareness. So here's the takeaway. The intensity of an empath is not a flaw. It's a gift. It's a force that can awaken dormant parts of yourself you didn't even know existed. But if you are unprepared, it will shake you. It will confront you with truths you've hidden, make you question your limits, and redefine what intimacy really means. To engage with an empath fully is to face the depth of life itself, unfiltered and unedited. And if you can embrace that, you're no longer just experiencing connection. You're experiencing transformation. In the end, the question isn't whether an empath is dangerous, but whether you are ready to meet someone who can hold the full weight of your soul. Because the moment you do, nothing about intimacy, desire, or emotional connection will ever feel ordinary again. One of the most remarkable and often misunderstood qualities of empaths is their ability to sense what is unspoken. They have this uncanny way of reading the hidden currents of desire, longing, and emotion in a person, sometimes before the person even realizes it themselves. This isn't about manipulation or control. It's a profound intuitive skill. Empaths operate like emotional radar systems, finely tuned to detect the subtle shifts in energy that reveal not just how someone feels, but what they truly want, even in the most private and intimate realms. And when it comes to sexual energy, this ability becomes something almost magnetic. Think about it this way. Most people communicate their needs and desires verbally, or at least through overt body language. But desire often lives in the shadows, in the parts of ourselves we keep hidden out of fear, shame, or insecurity. Empaths don't just notice the obvious. They sense the invisible. They can feel your hesitation, your fantasies, the things you've never dared to admit. And they respond to them naturally, almost effortlessly. This is why intimacy with an empathy can feel so transformative. You're not just being seen, you're being fully understood on layers that are normally invisible in human connection. But here's the catch. Most people are not prepared for this level of awareness. When an empathos into your deepest desires, it can feel almost invasive. Not because it violates boundaries, but because it exposes truths you may not be ready to face. Suddenly, your private thoughts and unexpressed longings are reflected back to you with clarity, amplified by their emotional resonance. For someone unprepared, this intensity can be overwhelming. It's like standing in front of a mirror that doesn't just reflect your face, but your entire inner landscape, including the hidden corners you try to keep locked away. Philosophically, this touches on a deeper principle. Human connection is never just about what we do. It's about what we reveal, consciously or unconsciously. Empaths accelerate this process because they are wired to perceive what is hidden. They create a space where pretense becomes almost impossible, where superficial layers fall away, and what remains is raw, authentic presence. In sexual and emotional intimacy, this is both exhilarating and frightening. It's exhilarating because it awakens a kind of connection most people never experience. It's frightening because it forces us to confront aspects of ourselves we've long ignored. This ability also carries enormous responsibility. An empath can sense not only your desires, but the gaps between who you are and who you aspire to be. They can respond in ways that challenge your comfort zones, pushing you to experience a depth of pleasure and connection that can be transformative. But if approached carelessly, it can feel destabilizing. For someone unprepared, this is the moment where danger becomes real, not in a physical sense, but in an emotional and psychological one. They hold up a mirror to your soul, and mirrors have a way of showing what we'd rather not see. Yet for those who are ready, this capacity is one of the greatest gifts imaginable. Imagine a sexual and emotional encounter where every nuance of your being is understood, where every unspoken desire is met with acknowledgement, where connection is not just physical, but profoundly mental and spiritual. That is what it means to engage with an empath. It's a reminder that human intimacy at its deepest level is about resonance, about alignment, about the meeting, G of energies in a way that transcends simple gratification. So the key here is awareness. Engaging with an empathy requires emotional courage and self-knowledge. It demands that you are willing to face not just their intensity, but your own. And if you can do that, the experience is nothing short of transformative. The empathing doesn't just see you, they awaken you. They reveal what has been dormant, what has been hidden, what has been longing to be felt. At the end of the day, the question isn't whether an empath can sense your hidden desires. It's whether you are ready to feel them fully, to confront the parts of yourself that have been waiting in the shadows. Because when you do, what emerges isn't just sexual connection. It's a profound awakening to the depths of your own capacity to experience, to love, and to be truly known. One of the most profound aspects of intimacy with an empathy is their ability to turn vulnerability into a form of power. Now, most people shy away from vulnerability. They equate it with weakness, with risk, with exposure that leaves them defenseless. But for an empath, vulnerability is a bridge, not a barrier. It's a tool through which they create connection, trust, and depth. When an empathing engages sexually, they invite their partner into this space. And in doing so, they dissolve the walls we so carefully build around ourselves. And make no mistake, this is where the danger comes from. It's not physical danger. It's emotional, psychological, and profoundly transformational. You see, an empath doesn't just connect with the body. They connect with the psyche. They tune into your fears, your longings, your insecurities, and they reflect them back with a clarity that can be both illuminating and unsettling. For most people, sex is often treated as a performance, a series of actions that satisfy desire without requiring deep exposure. Empaths dismantle that illusion. In their presence, the pretense falls away. They can see the parts of yourself you've hidden even from yourself. They sense the emotional gaps, the unresolved trauma, the parts of your story that you've tucked into shadows. And because they operate from a place of radical empathy, they create a space where those shadows can emerge safely, but only if you're willing to face them. This is why many find intimacy with an empathy overwhelming. You're not just being touched, you're being held, mirrored, and confronted. Every gesture, every subtle signal, every nuance of energy becomes a form of communication that transcends words. And here's the critical point. When vulnerability is treated as a weapon, it becomes destructive. When it's treated as a pathway, it becomes revolutionary. Empaths wield vulnerability as a pathway. They have the capacity to turn emotional exposure into growth, to transform sexual energy into something that heals as much as it thrills. There's a philosophical dimension here that's worth considering. We live in a culture that often equates strength with armor, with control, with detachment. But the Empath challenges that notion. They demonstrate that true strength lies in the courage to feel fully, to engage fully, and to meet another human being without pretense. When you are intimate with an empath, you are not just experiencing pleasure. You are being invited to grow, to confront, and to expand. And that's why so few people can truly handle it. The depth they demand is more than physical. It's spiritual, psychological, and existential. This dynamic also reveals a profound truth about human relationships. Most of us fear the mirror. Empaths are mirrors in the most intense sense. They reflect not only your beauty, your passion, your desires, but also your wounds, your limitations, your unhealed pain. They hold up this reflect. Ion during moments that are already charged with intensity, moments where our defenses are naturally lowered. And if you resist, if you recoil, it's because the reflection is too honest, too unflinching. The danger is simply the reality that most people are not accustomed to facing themselves so directly. But for those willing to embrace it, the rewards are extraordinary. Vulnerability with an empath is transformative because it is never superficial. It doesn't end with a fleeting moment of pleasure. It reshapes your understanding of intimacy, trust, and connection. It teaches you that real intimacy is not about performance, but about presence. It reminds you that true power comes not from control, but from the courage to feel fully, to surrender fully, and to connect fully. So the question isn't whether an empath exposes your vulnerabilities. It's whether you are willing to meet that exposure with courage. Because the moment you do, you step into a realm of connection and growth that few ever experience. And in that space, sexual intimacy ceases to be just a physical act. It becomes an encounter with your own soul, a mirror of your deepest truths, and a catalyst for transformation that echoes far beyond the bedroom. One of the most fascinating aspects of an empath's sexual energy is the way it amplifies everything around them. They don't just experience emotions and sensations, they magnify them, intensify them, and in doing so, they transform ordinary moments into something extraordinary. This amplification isn't deliberate or performative. It's an inherent part of their being. When you are intimate with an empath, every touch, every glance, every subtle movement becomes charged with emotional resonance. Pleasure feels richer, more vivid, more encompassing. And pain, yes, even discomfort, is felt more deeply because they have a way of reflecting not only your sensations, but your emotional reactions to them. It's an experience that can be as euphoric as it is overwhelming. Think about it this way. Most human interactions are filtered through layers of detachment or social conditioning. We moderate our emotions, we tone down our desires, we try to keep ourselves within predictable boundaries. Empaths don't operate like that. Their presence strips away those filters. They respond to energy with energy, and they feed back what they sense from you with a kind of emotional echo that is impossible to ignore. In sexual encounters, this means your pleasure is heightened, your connection deepened, and your vulnerabilities exposed. It's a level of intensity that most people have never experienced, and for many, it's almost too much to handle. Psychologically, This amplification serves a critical function. Pleasure and pain are not just physical, they are emotional and cognitive experiences as well. And empathy recognizes this and engages on all levels simultaneously. They are attuned to your body, your mind, and your emotional state, and they respond in ways that make the experience holistic, fully immersive, and profoundly memorable. But here lies the challenge. Few people are equipped to handle this level of awareness. Most of us have spent our lives learning to control, numb, or compartmentalize our sensations and emotions. When an empathite breaks through those defenses, it can feel destabilizing. The intensity is both magnetic and intimidating, drawing you in while simultaneously challenging your capacity to stay grounded. Philosophically, this points to a larger truth about human connection. Intimacy is not just about satisfaction. It is about resonance. When you are with an empath, every part of you, physical, emotional, psychological, resonates more deeply. They don't just meet you where you are, they amplify the entirety of your being. The parts you cherish and the parts you fear. And that amplification creates a kind of danger because it exposes the duality of human experience. You feel everything more deeply, and that depth can either elevate you or overwhelm you depending on your readiness. There's also an existential dimension to consider. Pleasure and pain are mirrors. They reveal your capacity to feel, to surrender, and to grow. By amplifying both, empaths accelerate self-awareness. They force you to confront the intensity of your own emotional landscape, to recognize how much you can handle, and to examine the parts of yourself that remain unintegrated or repressed. This is why they are often called dangerous, not because they intend harm, but because they challenge the boundaries we've set for ourselves, and they show us what it means to truly feel. Yet for those who are willing, the rewards are extraordinary. Amplification is not punishment. It is a gateway. When embraced consciously, it transforms sexual intimacy into a vehicle for emotional clarity, psychological insight, and even spiritual awakening. Every sensation becomes an opportunity to explore, to understand, and to integrate deeper aspects of yourself. With an empath, pleasure is never superficial, and connection is never shallow. The experience is immersive, catalytic, and ultimately transformative. So the question isn't whether empaths amplify pleasure and pain. It's whether you are ready to be fully seen, fully felt, and fully experienced. Because when you are, what seems dangerous at first becomes the most profound, enriching, and transformative encounter of your life. Amplification in their hands is not a threat. It's a gift, a mirror, and a doorway to the depths of your own potential for connection and intimacy. One of the most overlooked yet profoundly dangerous aspects of being intimate with an empath, their uncanny ability to detect inauthenticity. Now, most people think intimacy is about chemistry, about timing, about physical attraction. But for an empath, those are secondary. What matters most is alignment, the truth beneath the surface, the authenticity of intent. They have a natural radar for detecting energy that doesn't match words, actions, or even intentions. And when it comes to sexual or emotional encounters, this ability is magnified exponentially. If there is any hint of pretense, manipulation, or hidden agenda, they sense it immediately. It's not something they choose. It's something they are inherently wired to perceive. This can be unsettling for most people because intimacy with an empath is not a game. Casual connections, half-hearted intentions, or attempts to perform for pleasure without genuine emotional engagement are instantly visible to them. And here's the reality. Most people rely on layers of pretense in relationships, whether consciously or unconsciously. We all craft personas, masks, or behaviors to navigate vulnerability safely. Empaths see through those layers. They feel the tension between who you present yourself as and who you actually are. And when that tension exists, it creates a subtle yet undeniable energy that can derail the connection. Psychologically, this is both fascinating and transformative. When someone encounters an empath, the usual strategies of manipulation, avoidance, or superficial performance are ineffective. The empath perception exposes them. This forces a choice. Either confront the truth of your intentions and emotions or step back. Most people are not prepared to face that kind of clarity. They recoil, they rationalize, they disengage. That's why intimacy with an empathy is considered dangerous, not in a conventional sense of risk or harm, but in the way it unearths truth and exposes duplicity. There's a deeper philosophical layer here. Human beings often avoid truth because it is uncomfortable. We settle for half-truths, for illusions that make life manageable. Empaths, however, demand full presence. They create a space where pretense cannot survive, where alignment between internal reality and external behavior is not optional, but necessary. And this demand for authenticity is what makes sexual and emotional intimacy with them so profound. It's not just about physical pleasure, it's about confronting the totality of who you are, what you want, and what you are willing to bring into connection. This heightened sensitivity also acts as a protective mechanism. Empaths naturally filter out insincere or harmful energy. They don't just pick up on desire, they pick up on intent, on integrity, on emotional truth. And that is why they are selective, why casual encounters rarely satisfy them, and why they can seem intimidating to someone who approaches intimacy superficially. To be with an empath is to engage with a person who will not tolerate dishonesty, who will not settle for emotional shallowness, and who will push you toward clarity whether you are ready or not. But for those willing to meet this challenge, the rewards are extraordinary. Being seen fully, being engaged with authenticity is one of the most liberating experiences a human can have. Empaths create an environment where both partners are held accountable to their truth, where intimacy becomes a crucible for honesty, and where sexual connection transcends the physical into something profoundly psychological and spiritual. The danger is merely the mirror of our own avoidance, the aspects of ourselves we resist acknowledging until we are forced to by their presence. So the question isn't whether empaths detect inauthenticity. It's whether you are ready to meet yourself honestly. Because when your sexual intimacies ceases to be superficial, emotional intimacy deepens beyond measure, and every encounter becomes an opportunity for alignment, growth, and profound connection. In the presence of an empath, falsehood has nowhere to hide, and authenticity becomes the ultimate currency of love and desire. Perhaps the most profound and transformative aspect of being intimate with an empath is the way they force growth. Unlike conventional partners, empaths are not content with surface-level connection. They do not simply engage in pleasure for its own sake. They engage in transformation. And this is what most people find dangerous. It's not danger in the sense of harm or threat. It's danger in the sense of disruption. They disrupt your patterns, your defenses, your habitual ways of relating to yourself and others. And in doing so, they awaken parts of you that have been dormant, suppressed, or unacknowledged. Think about what growth really means. Growth requires awareness. It requires that you face the aspects of yourself you have been avoiding, the habits you have been tolerating, and the emotional truths you have been denying. Most people unconsciously shield themselves from these confrontations because they are uncomfortable, because they challenge our sense of stability and identity. Empaths, however, do not allow for avoidance. Through intimacy, through emotional resonance, through the sheer force of their perceptive presence, they create a space where growth is inevitable. They mirror back your deepest patterns, your fears, your desires, and your unhealed wounds. And in doing so, they compel you to face them. Sexual energy with an empath is no longer merely physical. It becomes a conduit for self-realization. Every touch, every gaze, every moment of presence is an invitation to explore, not just pleasure, but awareness. They amplify what is real and they expose what is false. They do not judge you, but they do not permit avoidance. In this sense, they are teachers. They hold up the mirror of your own consciousness and ask you a question you cannot ignore. Are you ready to see yourself fully? Philosophically, this is aligned with a deeper truth about intimacy. The deepest connections are not about comfort. They are about evolution. If you stay with someone who merely reflects your surface level desires, you remain static. You repeat patterns. you reinforce illusions, and you protect yourself from the truth. Empaths, by contrast, challenge you to confront your emotional reality and to expand your capacity to feel, connect, and integrate experiences fully. Their danger is simply the intensity of the growth they catalyze. It's like standing too close to a fire. The heat is intense, but if you lean into it consciously, it transforms you. This also highlights an important psychological principle. Growth often feels uncomfortable before it feels liberating. The very parts of you that resist change, the insecurities, the old emotional wounds, the unresolved fears, are the same parts that empaths activate through connection. And while that intensity can feel destabilizing, it is precisely what makes intimacy with them transformative. It is a process of alchemy, turning emotional awareness and vulnerability into self-mastery, clarity, and deeper human connection. Ultimately, being intimate with an empath is not about satisfying superficial needs. It is about awakening to your own potential. They demand courage, self-awareness, and authenticity. They make you confront your shadow, and they hold a space for your light. And in that convergence, sexual and emotional intimacy transcends ordinary experience, becoming a path to personal evolution. So the question isn't whether empaths are dangerous. It's whether you are willing to grow in their presence. Because when you are, what emerges is not just pleasure or connection. It's a profound expansion of consciousness, an integration of shadow and light, and an awakening to the full depth of your own capacity to love, to feel, and to be fully alive. And that, more than anything else, is the gift and the danger of intimacy with an empathist. So when we step back and look at the full picture, the reason empathists are considered dangerous isn't about fear, manipulation, or control. It's about depth. It's about intensity. It's about the way they confront the very core of who we are, forcing us to face truths we often hide, even from ourselves. They take what most people treat superficially, desire, connection, intimacy, and elevate it into something transformative, something that awakens the mind, heart, and soul simultaneously. They overwhelm because they feel everything fully, because they see the unspoken, because they turn vulnerability into power, because they amplify both pleasure and pain, because they detect inauthenticity instantly, and because they compel growth that most people aren't ready to face. That's not danger in the ordinary sense. It's danger in the form of awakening. It's the challenge of meeting yourself fully in someone else's presence. It's the intensity of being truly seen, truly felt, and truly known. And here's the ultimate truth. If you resist them, if you shy away from their intensity, you will only experience a fraction of what intimacy, love, and connection can truly be. But if you lean in, if you meet their energy with courage, authenticity, and openness, you step into a realm few ever experience. You step into a space where pleasure is not superficial, where connection is not shallow, and where growth and transformation are inseparable from desire. Empaths are dangerous because they hold a mirror to your soul. They reveal not just who you are, but who you can become. They challenge, they illuminate, and they awaken. And in that awakening, you discover a version of intimacy that is rare, electrifying, and deeply human. An intimacy that transforms not just your relationships, but your life itself. So the question isn't whether empaths are dangerous. It's whether you are ready to step into the depth, to face the truth, and to embrace a connection that will change everything. Because the moment you do, you'll realize that the so-called danger was never a threat. It was an invitation to feel fully, love deeply, and live with courage, clarity, and unmatched intensity. And that right there is the true power and the true gift of intimacy with an empathy.